Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. So, as I said in my last video, I wanted to start this video with Hilaria and Alec Baldwin, and I wanted to make sure, so I started the video the day I completed this video, the day I completed the other one, because there's always things that will break every day, breaking stories, big stories, right? And there's at least two today. There might be more. Like, I don't even know. I can't keep up with it. And so I started the video with Alec Baldwin and Hillary Hayward Thomas. And, her being a victim about her faking an accent and faking a persona. And I, launch into that for a bit and do some quality mocking of that shit. And then Alec is being interviewed with Hilaria, and he talks about marveling about one of her ex-lovers' giant dongs. No, I'm not exaggerating, that he actually does that. But whilst that was happening, and I started making this video, there were a couple of big stories. One, Trump completely lies about the Canadian tariffs, and he gets fact-checked and caught. And he's blaming, bad economic policy of the past on a deal that he called the greatest trade deal that he signed. And so he's talking about something did I say Paris? Canada. I don't know, it's Paris. He's complaining about Canada and how they're screwing us over, and they've been great at making deals with Joe Biden and other dopes. And then he cites a deal that he made, but he doesn't say that. Like, he leaves that out, of course. And he just sucks, like absolutely sucks. But while that was happening and I was making that video, there was a breaking story that Trump's Pentagon officials accidentally leaked war plans to a reporter. And I really want to cover how the left is reacting to Trump, because they just suck at it so bad, and they have no ground to stand on because they did the Joe Biden thing and there are other bullshit things they did. And so, all this does is, when I call people POSs, I call people pieces of shit. It's willingly living a lie. I don't compare myself to these people, because why would you? Like, why? That's like low standard, a low bar to measure yourself against. I mean, not them talking about being better or not. I'm talking about the standard you have to have for yourself as a human being. Because you can look at these people and go, well, at least I'm better than them. These people who are celebrities or politicians or media people, because they show up to work every day and they lie to people, knowingly lying, knowingly deceiving, or just being too stupid to know what they're saying isn't true or whatever it is, and just, just wallowing in deception, right? I mean, that could be like a t-shirt. These, people are wallowing in deception. And when I first started to make videos, I had a video entitled 95% chance Michelle Obama, Serena Williams, and Jennifer Aniston are born male or actually men or something, whatever. I think born male. And the video ended up getting 2 million views, and it took off, and it changed the trajectory of my channel. And there was a lot of things that were questionable, that were legitimate in the video. But I wouldn't make the same video today, and I wouldn't entitle it the same thing, because I have higher standards for myself, right? So what happened was, there's some right-wing people, right-wing sort of semi-truther people, a wife and a husband. The wife claimed that her husband worked for the police as a profiler, and they showed why they thought Michelle Obama was a dude. And I didn't take the video seriously. I watched it, but they made some things that were like questionable, right? And, the things that they showed that would demonstrate the way that you could tell someone was actually a male posing as a female, dressing up as a female, right? Things that you could tell about body types and stuff. And some of them started looking into the things just to call, BS on the video. I wasn't making these kind of videos myself, so I didn't, it wasn't something I thought about. And I started doing research, and some of the things they said were valid. Like, I don't know if Michelle Obama's a dude or not, but some of the things they said were valid. And there was a test. One of the indicators was if the ring finger was longer than your middle finger, and that would indicate, longer than your index finger. It would indicate higher levels of testosterone. So that in men, the ring finger is longer than the index finger, and in women, the index finger is longer than the ring finger. And I found one study that verified this, that this was, and it wasn't about anything to do with Michelle Obama. It was just something that they tested. They gave testosterone to rats and increased, their ring digit. There was some kind of stuff there. There's kind of a study. And I don't know if the study was bullshit, right? But it was there. There was a study that talked about this. And so the video popped and it made this channel, but then it created that whole "it's a dude" phenomenon, which bummed me out. There was a guy out there, I think his name was it Mr. E or something? He just made shitty videos. "That's a dude. That's a man. That's a man," like looking at some woman, right? And the reason I'm saying all this is, like, I've grown as a person and I had my own, ethical dilemma. So when I was making these videos saying these celebrity women were probably men and more than likely men, I would look for photos in which they looked masculine. And there were always some. Like, there was always some. Maybe a lot of them. They're not hard to find for Michelle Obama. She looks masculine in a lot of them. Because she's got broad shoulders and she looks dudeish. And, whether you think Michelle Obama's a man or not, or whether she is or not, this has nothing to do with what I'm saying. I'm talking about integrity, right? I'm talking about being truthful and honest. And so I was just going along announcing other shit that other people had said that I hadn't done research on, and a lot of it turned out to be exaggerated or sometimes just out and out lies. And I didn't feel like that was responsible. I can be very convincing as a person, and I have some, legitimacy in my, my spiritual, just in terms of my perceptive abilities and my pattern recognition. And if I was going to be honest and be different than CNN and be different than all these lying motherfuckers, right, then I had to hold myself to a standard. I didn't have an editor. I didn't have some fact checker. And so I started to make a distinction between what was fact and what was speculation. And, I would say to people, and make this into a comedy channel, less serious, and that would this idea that some of these things we will never know for sure. I mean, most of them we won't. And so, and really, how important was it? Like, I shift my perspective of not just, making these salacious claims and then backing them up with a bunch of bullshit that wasn't, valid research, wasn't valid facts, which happens a ton in the truth community, right? Because I felt like I owed it to my audience and myself as a spiritual, someone on a spiritual path, to be as honest as I possibly could, right? I mean, as I possibly could, not an excuse to lie, and just that there's things I didn't know. I would never intentionally mislead people, just to prove like I was right, or like even if I knew something was wrong, withhold information or put information forward that would validate what my thesis was, right? Another thing that happened was I had a number of women comment to me that they had longer index fingers than longer ring fingers than index fingers, and a number of them, 20 or so comments. And one young girl was someone who commented regularly, and she was like, I have broad shoulders, and I always think I look like a boy, and this really bums me out. She wasn't mad at me. And she took it like, and I was like, maybe, and then I started thinking about this study. And I was just because one goofy scientific study talked about the relationship between index fingers and ring fingers and testosterone, didn't make it true because I didn't find a lot of other stuff on that. And just because it supported what I was saying about Michelle Obama, and this other claim that these other people made, didn't make it true, right? What didn't make it valid science. And if there were a lot of women who actually had a longer index finger, then, a number of them said that they thought that was bullshit because they had it, right? And they knew they were women, so they, so this whole thing. So that wasn't a real true indicator. And so the way I made the video and how I went about making the video and all these things would be totally different now. And I don't really have an interest in making a video like that because I've evolved in what's important and what's not important, right? And so what I'm saying is you have to go through your own ethical dilemmas and these questions, you're confronted with. All of a sudden, I had people listening to me, and there was a responsibility. Right? With great power comes great responsibility, and not that this was some great power, but I owed it to my audience to be honest. Again, as honest as I could be, as truthful as I could be, not as honest. I should always be honest. We should always be honest. I should be 100% honest. But the truth is sometimes what we believe to be the truth is wrong, and you're just making a mistake, an innocent mistake, right? But there are a lot of people out there that just fucking lie in and out of the truth community, and then all these pieces of shit. And I'll get into Tucker Carlson and Trump and all the mainstream media. They lie about everything. My wife and I were talking about remember the bullshit mask stuff that, they made everybody wear masks and they knew that they didn't work, all that shit, right? Why aren't they held accountable? Why is that brought up? Why isn't there apologies? And all the other COVID bullshit that we're wrong about. And many people are aware that they're wrong and feel fucking pissed off about it. Many people are suffering harm from the bloop and all that shit, right? I don't even know whether I can say it yet because YouTube still has their stupid policies up. I mean, the whole thing's so fucked, right? And so this is what I'm talking about when I say people are pieces of shit. When they willfully deceive, they know they're lying, and they withhold information that's harmful to you. That's harmful that they've withheld the information and all the other stuff, right? And this is what I'm talking about, Trump and all these people. They would rather be right or they'd rather be in power than do what's the right thing to do. There's no sense of character development or integrity. They never question what they're doing. They never look inside and say, oh, I have to do better. Like realizing their mistakes and then, not because they got caught, but because they don't want to be a lying piece of shit, right? Realizing your mistakes, because we're all going to make mistakes. And people shouldn't be judged from their mistakes. They should be judged for not trying to do better or not working to correct those errors. If we're to be judged, it's not because we made mistakes. It's because we haven't done anything to change. We're not looking to be better and evolve. We always have to be, holding ourselves accountable. And these people don't do it. And not like I'm some great person at doing it, but I do it. I do want to be better. I do want to improve what I do here with my farm work and things and, clean up some of the mistakes. And, not that I'm a perfectionist, and I dislike perfectionists because, that's just, to me, going over the top and that, is out of some weird, twisted kind of, psychological issues in most cases. But at least some desire to be better and working to be better and working to be truthful and seeing the ways that we can improve. And when we do see that we failed and we have some issue that we should be doing better at or we could correct, then correcting it, right? And these people just ignore it and lie. And, Trump's one of the worst ones, but they're all bad. And that's why I talk about this here, right? Just, failing in some way or doing something that's just not up to some, standard we should hold to ourselves. And then realizing, oh, I got to do better. Not because you got caught or not because, you're doing it to look good, but just because inside yourself you want to feel good about yourself and the work that you're doing. So the other thing is I want to quickly address this comment. And a person writes, it really sucks the Journey series is behind a paywall because I actually followed this channel for that. All the celebrity gossip doesn't do it for me. Now, I don't really cover celebrity stuff barely ever, and it's just part of some videos, not specifically about that. The video he's responded to was Alec and Hilaria relationship. Reveal who pinched Don Lemon's nips. Somebody did, according to Don. I got something at the end of this. I'm going to have Don's reaction to a screw up, and again, he blows it and sucks. The thing is that I didn't intentionally put the Journey series behind a paywall. It worked out that way because the copyright stuff that the Heartfulness organization did, they started copyrighting my videos, and I didn't want to lose the channel. Unfortunately, I had to delete all the old ones. And so there's a couple other reasons that I made it just for members. and eventually I might make it public for everybody. But you could pay $4 a month, right? Now the Journey series, it's my life story. Like it's got all this like knowledge, and I mean everything I do here, share everything that I have to offer. Like I don't withhold information, or I don't have like um, things. It's valuable. The energy that comes through me, the stuff that whatever I do here, and for people who see it and appreciate it, like those of you who do, they see that this stuff has value. The information or the energy or all of it has value. And, these are the kind of things that people sell, memoirs, and they try to make a buck on their stories and things. And I have stories and jokes and all these things that I share here, freely. There's the membership programs there. Right now I'm just on the cusp of making slightly less than $100 a day. I feel like I should get paid $100 a day for what I do here. That's the bare minimum. Like I think I should, technically make, $1 million a year. Some of these people who, Joe Rogan makes hundreds of millions of dollars on his show, which is not, to me, nearly as good as what I produce here, right? Joe Rogan's certainly superior than someone like Don Lemon who got paid $24 million. These are all people who share their opinions about things, share their insights, and tell their stories, right? There's all these podcasts, and many of these podcasts, and many of these people make millions of dollars, right? And I understand my audience is going to be different, and I say things and do things. I'm not a networker, and I'm not a businessman, and I have my limitations. But I feel like the stuff that I offer here has far more value than these other people. And I got an audience of anywhere between 3,000 and 5,000 people a day per video. That's generally what I get per views. And I could put it all behind a paywall and make more money and exclude people, but I haven't, I've steered away from that. But there is a membership program, and there's ways people can donate, or there's super chat and help support the channel. Because I'm making, less than $36,000 a year. The average income is 60,000, 66 or something like that. That's the mean income. So I'm making half of what the normal people make. I work a full-time job here, and I, devote a lot of time and energy into this thing. And I, like I said, compared to other people who do similar things, I'm on the lower end, and YouTube suppression and my lack of, networking, and me saying truthful things that are, going to hurt people's feelings, and they're going to run away because they're butthurt, and, not pandering to people, but, just telling the truth, like I said earlier, holding myself accountable for, just in the way that things go. And, there's things here that about Christianity and religion and, Trump and other things that other people won't say. Sometimes they know it to be the truth. They just don't want to say it because they don't want to lose members and lose viewers. And so, you could pay $4 a week. If you think the Journey series is great, don't whine to me about it being, fucking behind a paywall when you could pay it $50 a year. You could work 1 hour each month to pay for the Journey series. And, it's kind of like something you should do in a way, because you're getting something. Like if it's helping you in your life, it's helping you navigate your own spiritual journey, it has value. Like if it has value to you, then you can't pay $4 a month, right? $48 a year for something like that, or wherever else, just to support the channel. Because there's a lot of times these talks, these things that I say here, these these voiceovers go into the Journey series anyway, because they have spiritual information in them. I talk about spirituality almost, all my videos, probably 4 or 5 videos a week. There's some, at least 1 or 2. There's probably about 5 or 6 or 7 voiceovers that are specifically about spirituality. And in my clips, some of the clips I'm covering, I come back to this idea. This is part of my role here, is to compare the people that are supposedly successful, either rich people or powerful politicians or media people or celebrities, to a spiritual life, right? To, what you get from wealth and fame, which is misery and deception and corruption and, all these bad things. And what you get from a spiritual life is, connecting to the divinity within you and being a part of the true reason that you're here, to connect to God and evolve spiritually. And so, if it's not worth it for you, fine. But if it is, then fucking get a job. Like if you worked 1 hour a month and you made $8 an hour, that would pay for, you'd have to work 6 months and it would pay for your whole thing. If you work 2 hours, I mean, if you can't come up with $4 a month, like, I'm not charging a fortune for it, right? Like, I mean, I don't know what to say about it. Like, it's not my problem. It's your problem. Like, you know what I mean? If it's not worth it to you, then there's no reason to leave a comment. Like, if it's not worth to come up for $4, I mean, think about, you go to Starbucks and you pay like $5 for one of those shitty coffees, or like the number of things that you buy for $5. Things that are wasteful, and any number of things, foods that are bad for you. You go see a movie, whatever it is, it's some shitty movie or whatever that has no spiritual value, no upliftment. No, it's not going to better you as a person. And what you get from listening to the Journey series is far more substantial. And you don't want to cough up $4 a month. It's not my problem. Like, it's not worth it to you. I mean, think about all the things you spend money on, and wasteful money, and you can't come up with $4 to support the channel. Like, it's just, whatever. Like, I'm sacrificing enough already. Like, I feel like I'm drastically underpaid. I've been on the bare minimum for the last 2.5, 3 years. I was making a lot more money before. Then YouTube fucked me with their policies. They fucked all of us. And now they're charging less money per video, per ad, and all these other things. And so, without people supporting the channel, I couldn't do this. Without other people contributing to the membership program or leaving these super chat donations, it's the only thing keeping me afloat. If it was just YouTube ads, I would make probably $1,500, $2,000 a month, which is not, nearly enough to. I mean, again, giving away what I consider extraordinarily valuable information for basically free, and then having to put up with all the hostility and the bullshit and all the other things that we have to put up with here, when we're on the internet with social media. And so I understand if you don't get it and you're a hater, why would you pay? But if you value it and you have the money and you just think it should be free, well, it isn't free for me. It wasn't, I had to pay for everything. Like, all these things that I not only just physically and I, the things that I've learned and all the stuff that I endured spiritually and in my life, but to make me into the person I am, I went to college and got my master's degree. I had to pay for all that kind of shit, all the experiences and, all the money I've put into, what is my story here, where my stories had cost me financially, they cost me physically, they have value, they have a monetary value. And, I mean, not just they're valuable in other ways beyond money, right? And so, again, I mean, just people should think before they leave stupid comments. And so, you're like, it's like almost like a guilt trip. I wish you would make this free, and I really, I wish you would pay $4, right, a month. Like, why should I sacrifice for you? Like, why don't you, I mean, that's what it costs. It costs $4 to listen to the Journey series. So pay $4. I mean, if you don't want to do it, then just don't, if it's not worth it for you, that's fine. I'm not forcing you to do it, but, don't be coming out looking for a fucking handout, because, I mean, if you can't come up with $4 for a month, like, almost anybody can do that. Like a fucking, homeless person come up with an extra $4. Like, I mean, I bet if you gathered some cans up and shit, you sold some cans, you could do this. I mean, even like working as a bagger at the freaking grocery store, you could, make an extra $4. I mean, I don't have a paper route or some shit, right? Anyways, do they still have paper routes? All right, so this is going to be an epic video. Anyways, lots of shit in here, a lot of good stuff. Let's get into it. Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. So, I've made hundreds of videos, at least 150, on this channel, wherever it was, some more on the other channel, including Alec Baldwin. Not all of them were specifically about him. Like, I just made, I would do updates and things. Of course, I started to fade away from making videos, and then he went and shot a coworker, things like this. And I've been sort of, one of the go-to people for Alec Baldwin stuff, that people, when anything happens with him, they immediately come back to my channel and send me links, or they contact me on Instagram or something. Did I say greetings, brothers and sisters? Today's Sunday, March 23rd. This video is going to be made on Monday, probably not up till Wednesday. In my last video, I said I was going to lead with this, and so I thought I would do this early and get a jump on it so I didn't forget in case some bombshell thing happened. Which, is always, there's something bombshell happens almost every day, even on Sundays. And so, I kind of got away from it. I don't like to cover things for very long, but when they come back around, I usually do an update or a booster or whatever it is. So people are sending me a lot of shit with Alec Baldwin and Hilaria. And there's 2 video clips I have now. One where Alec gets cucked by her, which we'll go to in a moment. But this is her explanation for her stealing an accent.
My kids to be bilingual. I was raised bilingual. My family, all my nuclear family now lives over in Spain. Okay, entonces...
Now they live over in Spain. So her parents, who were wealthy, she grew up in Boston and went to a Boston high school. And, she learned to speak Spanish, which many people do. But she wasn't Spanish, right? Her language is English. Her parents spoke English, and at some point taught her how to speak Spanish. But it isn't just she has Spanish accent, an English accent, American accent and Spanish accent. She has these gestures and facial expressions and that are very stereotypical, and they're also acting. Like it's a white person trying to act like a Spanish person, right? It isn't something she grew up with. Her mom's name was either Hayward or Thomas, and her dad's name was either Hayward or Thomas. I guess Hayward. The mom was Hayward, which is a very white name, and Thomas, Thomas English Muffins, right? Thomas is one of the most white names. What I had learned is what I thought is her parents came from England and Scotland. I have an article that says Irish or something, and in English, but either way, she's English. She's white, right? She's from England. Her ancestry is from the the white countries of Europe, and Spain. They're also white, but a little bit darker. But she is an American girl who grew up from European ancestry, but wasn't Spanish. And she started to learn to speak Spanish. Her family vacationed in Spain, and they taught her Spanish. But that isn't her first language. She shouldn't have an accent, right? When she speaks English, she should speak it without an accent. And there are people who are bilingual, and they can speak multiple languages without an accent. Now, I don't know what her Spanish is. Maybe some of my Spanish-speaking viewers can speak to her Spanish. I've had viewers... I used to make fun of Cardi B, and I said, well, English must be her second language. And people said her Spanish is even worse. Either way, she's just, very inarticulate, Cardi B. So I don't know if Hilaria Baldwin speaks with a flawless Spanish accent with no English accent in there, right? Because when you're an English person, you speak French or any of these number of languages. When your first language is English, you have an accent in that secondary language, right? And so, her thing is complete bullshit because we see her speak English flawlessly at times, and she has a very mousy, high voice, English, irritating accent. When she speaks Spanish, it's better. When she speaks English with a Spanish accent, it's better, her voice. And so, and her husband likes her being Spanish. That's an act, right? It's 100% an act. We'll get into it in a moment. I have an article I want to get to.
Siéntate aquí, no, it looks so nice. Are you kidding me? I want to teach my kids pride in speaking more than one language. I think just growing up and speaking 2 languages is...
Not one of her kids, and I haven't seen the show, not one of her kids speaks with a Spanish accent. They might speak Spanish, but they have an American accent because they're growing up in America with American-speaking dad and American TV and American friends and American siblings. And so none of them speak with a Spanish accent. And if they did, that would be weird because that wouldn't happen naturally. They would be faking it, right? Like their mom who fakes it, So it's a really weird thing. And she keeps on sticking to this story because she's caught like appropriating a culture.
Is extremely special. love English. I also love Spanish. And when I mix the two, it doesn't make me inauthentic.
It makes you inauthentic that you're speaking with a Spanish accent because you don't need to do that, right? That's somebody who doesn't speak English well. Your first language was English, right? You didn't grow up, your parents didn't speak Spanish first and then teach you English. You went to, school. The whole thing is fucking stupid, right? Just, like she got caught and hasn't been able to ever be honest about it. Your whole persona is a fake. It's an act, right?
When I mix the two, that makes me normal. I'd be like.
Makes you normal. It makes you normal when you mix the two. You know how to say the word onion or cucumber. How do you say in English? Cucumber? Oh, cucumber. Right? Like, that's stupid. Like, it's just an act. You're acting. You're faking it. You're putting on a performance. And that's, nobody likes that shit. Superficial. And when you get caught doing that, you're a fraud. And she kept on doing it. And it was the worst scandal the Baldwins had until her husband shoots a coworker. And then it was like, all right, they forgot about Hilaria doing this, cultural appropriation.
Lying if I said it didn't make me sad and it didn't hurt and it didn't put me in dark places. But it was my family, my friends, my community who speak multiple languages, who have...
Oh, Jesus Christ.
...of belonging in multiple places and realize that we are a mix of all these different things, and that's going to have an impact on how we sound and an impact on how we articulate things and the words that we choose and our mannerisms.
No, you're faking. You've taken mannerisms that your parents didn't have. I don't know where she got them, right? Whatever time in Spain or whatever it is, right? When my family and I go to India, and I brought my wife, when my wife and I went to India for the first time in 2020 for her. And the Indians do this little head bob, this head wiggle. And my wife was like, oh, wow, this is amazing. Like, it's just interesting to watch. You're talking to them and they're wiggling their head, and it can mean a multitude of things. And my wife started to try to imitate it, and we would all laugh. We all, showed like our version of it. But it's something that other people do that you notice and then you can imitate, but it's not natural to you. And when you stay in that country, you might start doing those things. And so when my family and I returned, well, like the Indian people didn't understand my American accent, right? They don't speak, they speak a British English, and a lot of them don't speak English. It's their third language or their second language, and they don't speak a language that well, but they won't tell you they don't understand what you're saying. And so when we went to go to the movies together, my son started to be able to imitate the Indian accent. And he would, talk to the cab drivers, right? And he usually sit in the front seat or whatever, talk to the cab drivers, or he would talk, from the back seat or whatever. I guess I can't remember the whole thing, but he talked to the cab drivers. And my kids were able, because they were hanging out with Indian kids, and they started to develop that accent a little bit out of necessity. And then we came back, we landed in we came back and we're going to live in Vegas for a little while. And we had a cab going to the apartment that we had waiting for us. And we got into the cab, and my son started talking to the cab driver in an Indian accent, right? And we all started laughing because we were back in America. He didn't need to do that anymore. But it's something that it's an added thing. And it's, and then you can develop those mannerisms. You can imitate people, but it isn't what you do naturally. And it's an act if you do it on something like this. And she's, Alec's been telling everybody that she's Spanish. She's got a Spanish accent. This is all fake. Like, she's made up this story, but like nobody believes it because we know what your background is, right?
That's normal. That's called being human.
Yeah, there you go. And she lectures you on like this thing, but she's obstinate about it, which has made people hate her that much more. Look at her face. She's very tough and aggressive and, nasty and angry and not a good person inside. And, fucked up mentally. Like, this thing that she's done is fucked up. Like, she's spent the last 15 years pretending she's something she's not. Like, a totally different, all these mannerisms. And she goes in and out of this accent. Sometimes she speaks English like an American. Sometimes she speaks English with a Spanish accent. Sometimes she's, it's in between those two things. But it's, it's an ever-changing accent because it's not real. Like, it didn't happen organically. And, people speak with an accent they do it because they don't have a choice, right? I mean, people who do it naturally because that's how they speak English. They speak English with an accent. And, that's not her, right? This is from a publication called The Collider. I've seen this before. I think it's like a more edgy celebrity type of thing, right? These are these kids that don't speak with an English accent. The Baldwin is in a reality TV. It's a horror. TLC's newest reality show, The Baldwins, offers viewers a glimpse in the home of Alec Baldwin, his wife Hilaria Baldwin, and the 7 children and 6 pets they share. The show follows the family through whatever it is, right? We find the family navigating a surreal crisis, Alec's involvement in the tragic and fatal shooting of cinematographer Hal Hutchinson, and all this stuff. It says here, the Baldwins nervously awaits trial at a home and plasters on a head, a dead-eyed smile splashed around in a pool, decorates cakes for the kids. The Baldwin is left a reality show than a horror show story. It's the naked display of deeply layered domestic darkness. Like, holy shit, right? So who in the world is Hilaria Baldwin, right? They fucked her with that photo. Hilaria, formerly known as Hillary Hayward Thomas, isn't a stranger to scrutiny. She was born and raised in Massachusetts and is of English, German, and Irish descent. And yet, inexplicably, she speaks with a Spanish accent, which she has previously claimed is due to her Spanish heritage. Summers spent in Spain on family vacations are her only connection to the country, it turns out, as if Rachel Dolezal had pretended to be a different kind of white. Eventually, she forced to conform on Instagram that she is, in fact, a white girl. Confirm. On the show, she touches on the scandal, but only briefly and vaguely, and as a victim. She shares the whole world as mean to her because of her accent, and it took her to dark places. Nevertheless, her affectation persists. So this thing is pretty much... it's not good for the Baldwins, but, I mean, they don't care because they're attention whores. So she regularly abuses Alec, right? She wanted to be famous, and she's written books and she's co-hosted shows and done announcing like on those Hollywood, Access Hollywood, whatever it is, Entertainment Tonight, right? She really milked her celebrity. She, some people marry a celebrity and you never hear from them. You see them once in a while at a, like a opening of a movie, one of those parties or whatever they call those things. Occasionally, maybe you don't even know they exist. But she has made it clear that she wants to be more famous than Alec. They've had all these kids, which is questionable how many kids she actually carried. She's, really fake about everything, right? The whole fake. And she's just a disaster. And it's going to be elder abuse. Like, this comes down to it. She's going to be abusing the crap out of this guy because she's very abusive. And she cucks the shit out of him. And he likes it. So listen to this fucking story.
I've seen one of the loves of her life naked.
Not the love of my life.
He was one of the loves of her life.
Stop it. Just stop it. She's not the love of my life. Stop it. Stop it, Alec.
Life. He was a very important boyfriend of hers. And we went to go see him on Broadway, and he was naked.
Okay, so you went to Broadway to see her naked ex-boyfriend? Why the fuck would you do that? Like, why would you go do that? I mean, what would make you do that, right?
As our British friends, he had his bits out.
His British accent sucks.
We went to go see Take Me Out, the musical that our dear friend Scott Ellis directed, and all...
Okay, so her ex-boyfriend happened to be cast in that. He's not your dear friend if he's cast in her ex, and he's going to be naked in front of you.
All these baseball players were in the locker room, and they were all turned around naked with their dongs hanging out. And he's there.
What kind of play is that? On Broadway? Like, it sounds like, I mean, it sounds like some sort of, gay male review up there.
Baseball players were in the locker room, and they were all turned around naked with their dongs hanging out. And he's there, her boyfriend, and I recognize him. I met him before. And when he turns around with his personality hanging out, I'm like, oh!
Look at her.
Oh, okay. he had like a clarinet hanging from his pants. The guy literally turns around and we were all like,
And we're really glad you admire your wife's ex-boyfriend's dong there, Alex. Like he's too bad you didn't. Too bad he wasn't a cinematographer on one of your movies.
ah! Whoa.
I think you remember this more than I do.
And when,
Well, it's what? See, that's how she speaks in English.
This more than I do.
and when you meet him backstage, we go out into the lobby, we meet them all. And her boyfriend comes and I'm like, hey, how you doing?
And I was like, I'm going to stay over here.
What was that? Why would you do a robot?
Comes and I'm like, hey, how you doing?
And I was like, I'm going to stay over here.
And you can't pay attention to a word he's saying. He's standing right here talking to me. I'm sitting looking at him going, and he's looking at me going, yeah, you know, the show and this and that and this. And I'm like, you have like a baseball bat that you stuff into your pants every day. How does that work for you?
How does it work for Hilaria, Alec? I mean, she chose fame over the dong. I mean, that's the kind of quality woman she is.
Oh, let's move on from that subject.
Yeah, let's move on, Alec, because it was uncomfortable from the beginning. Why'd you bring this up? I mean, it's just fucking weird. Like, you guys are so fucking weird already. Why bring up something that's like just makes you even weirder? Like, holy shit, you guys. I said to them, I didn't know they were watching my show because I had been hammering him for a while. Some of my videos got more like lots of views. I don't know if he ever saw my videos. But I told them, both of them, to shut the fuck up and get off of social media. Every time you go out, don't talk to the press. Stop fucking making it worse. I have no idea whether you ever watched my show, but then they start doing it. I mean, lawyers and other people publicists must have told them now that over and over again. Stop fucking talking. And then you guys do a reality show. What do you think is going to make you beloved by America again or something? You were never that. Like, Alec was never someone people really liked. He was just somebody who was in movies and TV shows, maybe had some fans. He was a staunch Democrat, so he had that. And Hilaria is, Hillary Haywood Thomas is really dislikable. I mean, just before the fake accent, just everything about her, she's not very likable. She's just annoying and frickin', just one of those people who's got that annoying voice. And together, they're horrible. And then they've done bad shit. They've gotten these scandals. And then you're going to be talking about her ex-boyfriend's dong and how he was admiring it on stage. Like, what the fuck? How bad do you want to be cucked? Right? I mean, the whole thing, it's not, what's probably more important is his age. Because I think he's 25 years older than her. I'll check this out here.
Wasn't on my list of
This wasn't on my list of questions.
I felt it had to be told. I
had to be told. Like, I just had to talk about her ex-boyfriend's magnificent dong. Right? I had to say how much I admired it and how intimidating it was. And like, Jesus Christ. It's the age difference that would be more disturbing. He was 53 and your testosterone level goes down. And, it just happens. And he was 53, she was 27. And so, that's going to be a problem later on. You might have, you might be balanced in your sexual appetites and then other reasons, whatever it is, other things that make your relationship work. But now she's going to be his caretaker. So now he's 66 and she is 41. When they met, he was almost twice her age. Same thing we saw with Kamala Nepads Harris. And so those kind of relationships are doomed, like you're 2 generations away. And then, of course, she has that multicultural background. And he's a, acting star. So it's like a doomed relationship. Like, they're not, when you see them talk, they have this banter they do. It's kind of weird. But they're, completely different people. Like, they're very superficial and weird and all these things. And then all the crises they've gone through. And now he looks, much older than 66. He looks like he's in his 70s. And so, and then it's just, at some point, you just fall off a cliff health-wise. And he's got those kids, like one of those kids is like 2-3 years old. And so by the time that kid's 20, Alec is going to be 86 or, 80-something, right? 83, whatever it is. So, I mean, Jesus. Like, what a fucking disaster. They're just so fucking weird. this show isn't helping him. I mean, these little clips are coming out. It doesn't make them more likable. It makes them just like weirder. Like they're not normal people, and they've had so many weird things go on. And, you know, they don't have a lot of love out there. I don't know how many people are watching it and most of the people are watching this train wreck. And, you know, at some point I'll take a look at it. Not today, but some point. But Jesus, Alex. I mean, Alec, what a fucking disaster you've made. And she's wrecked his life. Like everything, ever since she's been married to her. I mean, he went from being whatever he was, like nobody gave a shit about him, to one of the most hated celebrities in the history of Hollywood, right? And so that's all on her. I mean, he contributed because he's hateable, he's arrogant, but like if he had married somebody better, that wouldn't be the case. And now he's got what, like 8 kids or 7 kids or whatever? And he's going to be old. He's like a grandfather. Like he should be, these should be his grandkids. And like the whole thing. They have money and nannies or whatever it is, but what a fucking disaster. Okay, so Monday, March 24th. Continuing on from yesterday, I just want to say a little bit more about Alec and Hilaria. There's, an abusive, she's an abusive person in various ways. You can see, like, her temper, she has toxic, she has this, nastiness inside her, whatever it is, anger. People have these things. But she really undermines Alec, right? And so, Alec has made her what she wants, which is to be a celebrity. And the thing that she did is so embarrassing. So she grew up not needing an accent, and she created an accent and a persona. She started to be a different person. This is like, if you ever seen the Brady Bunch episode where Peter Brady says, decides that he wants to be a different dude. And they did the same thing with Jan, because they were middle kids, in the Brady Bunch. It's the new Jan Brady, like this whole thing. And they did the same storyline with Peter. We came out, he said, pork chops and applesauce. I had that as a meme. I don't know if I still have it. I'm not going to play it here. But he started talking differently because he wanted to be a different person. And they had this thing where the middle kids were always, didn't stand out or whatever. And, people who decide to embrace a different sort of persona, they become a different person. But, usually that person doesn't have a different ethnicity, right? They don't have, especially nowadays where that's considered cultural appropriation. And she's a liberal person in a liberal world of Hollywood celebrity, is the liberal people. And her husband's very liberal, anti-Trump, these things, in terms of their politics. And, she creates this persona, which her husband likes a lot, where he's going out and saying, my wife's Spanish from Spain. She's from Spain? Is she from Alec? She's from fucking Boston. I make this joke all the time. She's from Boston, Spain. This place, and that there's a little townhouse in Boston, Massachusetts that also exists in Spain. It's this really wonderful like vortex that happens. And so, she makes this persona and, gets these mannerisms and all these things, which, like I said, it's like he hired a hooker, some high-end hooker, to pretend she was Spanish because he has a thing for Selma Hayek, Selma Hayek lookalike. There's the age difference and there's a lot of weirdness in their relationship. But imagine if you had a coworker and you worked in an office or something, or just this story was there, and the person came in every day and had a Spanish accent some of the time, and then talked with a very American accent other times, and had a medium accent, but, was claiming to be this person, and then you found out they weren't from Spain, they were from Boston. It would be weird. They might, they'd probably be fired if they could fire them. And imagine if she's like a salesperson, and she met with all these clients, high-end clients, and she pretended to be Spanish, and then came out she wasn't. You'd have to fire the person. Like, they'd have no credibility, and they'd be like, that's weird as fuck, right? And if you had a person in your life who you met and you went on a date with some girl like this or something, and she was rocking this Spanish accent, and then, 6 months in, like, you're married, she's like, yeah, I'm not really Spanish, or, it came out, like, or not even, like, admitting, because she doesn't admit to it, so that's not even accurate. Like it came out, like all of a sudden you find out, you're like, you're from Boston, and she'd be like, yeah, like, and so and you're like, well, what's up? And she's like, oh no, I grew up bilingual. This is my, the whole thing she does, right? And so, it's really fucked up. So she gets caught, and Hollywood's the whole Me Too thing's going on, and cultural appropriation stuff is going on. Like this is just, a scandal for her and her group of people, the people they hobnob with, and the rest of it, right? And now it's noticeable because you go through and comb through her video clips, and she has this ever-changing accent. And so now like she's just acting. She's created this persona. And so that's like weird as fuck. And so when somebody does something like that and, they are caught, so what do? Like, so it's really embarrassing. It's really weird and embarrassing. And then her husband shoots a coworker, so it gets fucking worse, right? So this is a weird fucking family. Gwen Walsh type of weird, where someone's just strange and fucking, whatever, annoying. And so now there's a bigger scandal, and you just go away. Like, and it's crazy because she says some fans still. Like, she's annoying as hell, and she's like just really narcissistic. I mean, she's a bad person. You can tell how competitive she is. She has a kind of a women should beat men kind of thing. She has a adversarial relationship with Alec. Like, she's always ragging on him like she did with the other thing. They have this banter thing they do that they think is funny, and nobody else, just makes everyone else uncomfortable. And the level of the lack of self-perception, I mean, for people who supposedly hate Trump, like they've done some narcissistic, embarrassing bullshit. The faking of an accent is something, a superficial thing. Faking a persona, somebody like doesn't like themselves and wants to be something they're not, and it's just a weird thing to do, right? And she can't carry it off because she doesn't maintain the same accent. It's like fluctuates. And so like she's been caught and exposed, and she goes and said, if all this stuff has happened with her husband, with the shooting, like you're just done. Like, all right, you had your arc of fame, and you're infamous now. You just go away. Like, you have money, you have all these kids. You don't need to be on social media. You have nothing to say. You have nothing to offer people. You're just fucking weird. Your opinions are bad. There's nothing that you can do. You've lost all credibility. Let's make a reality TV show. Like, just, and double down all this stuff and defend it. Like, it's still like you have a case for it. Everybody fucking knows you're from Boston. Like, I mean, it's just mockable. You have a small group of fans, whatever they are. I think she has like 1 million followers on Instagram, so she probably has maybe 100,000 fans for whatever that is, and that's a marketable thing. Those people. It's an audience and community. Alec is done on Hollywood. He's old and he's grumpy, and he's played out. He was already making B movies, and the movie he shot the coworker at was a really low budget $5 million movie where he was producer. He had to put up some of his own money to make the movie. And he's been in a number of these shitty movies, like they have this stuff with Bruce Willis. Bruce Willis has got dementia, but they still roll him out in these really bad movies. So he's still getting paid for crappy movies where he'll get some role. These horrible movies. Like, you've watched a recent Bruce Willis movie, and that's where Alec Baldwin was in. Making almost basically cameos and bad movies. He made a movie called, I don't know what it was. It was an Irish movie. He played an Irish priest. And it was a side character. He was a gun wielding Irish priest, a lot of shooting in that movie as well. And so, you got a guy who, his career's tanked, and now it's even worse. He's had a scandal, and he's just old and miserable and grumpy. They have all these kids, and they're in a weird space. They have a place in New York where they like to frequent New York things and do New York stuff. He's a Woody Allen kind of fan, that kind of weird stuff that goes on with those, he backed Woody Allen, these other people. That he's got that New York kind of thing going on, like a romance with New York. And they got this other house out in the Hamptons, a beach house. And they have all these kids to deal with now. And they have whatever, millions of dollars that they made before. And it's enough. Like, you just go away, you hide away, you realize that, your character arc or your fame has gone south on you, right? But they do this stupid ass reality TV show, which already is showing because people are like out to get them, and so anything that's like red meat for the haters, and you just keep on cranking it out, like just cranking out this bad content and bullshitting people and pretending like you didn't get fucking caught impersonating or making a fake person that isn't you. Like, it's really fucking weird, really strange people. Like, as much as he claimed to hate Trump, and that's where I found his hypocrisy on Instagram, where he's just, everything he hates about Trump, he has. It's narcissism, it's like whatever, and the inability to self-perceive. And he showed exactly the kind of stuff that Trump does. Because when you get caught red-handed doing stuff, and you're clearly involved in it, that horrific interview he did after he shot his coworker that was so self-serving, and he fake cried and he played a victim. I mean, they're both playing victims the way Trump plays a victim when he's created the problem. He got caught doing bullshit instead of owning up to his failure. Trump, he does this other stuff, right? He does all the stuff that he does. Blames the victim, how it's all fake news and they're all against him. And that's what Hilaria and Alec are doing. They are victims of their own stupidity. She is a liar and a faker, as all actors are, and she's bad at it. Embarrassing. This is really embarrassing what happened, her faking an accent. And then he shoots a coworker, and he's a producer on the show, and he's accountable, right? It's so fucked. And then, they're just, well, yeah, we're victims, and like, look at that, poor me, and, all this stuff. And then they're like, oh, Trump sucks. Well, because, you're inner Trump. I talked about Alec. I realized his horrible impression of Trump was just, he does these ducky lips. He he purses his lips, and that's how he did Trump. He just exaggerated his own mannerisms, his own idiosyncratic stuff. And so that's why he doesn't do Trump's voice. He doesn't do a impression of Trump. He just does himself. And it's not funny because, it's just, he's annoying, and he just becomes more annoying and pretends that, puts on a wig to be Trump, and it's just horrible. And so this is like how people react to when they fuck up, like they make mistakes. And we're going to get into Trump stuff here now. Similar stuff with the tariffs. Like, how do you figure, what do you do to get better? Like, what do you do to show people that you can change and you learn from your mistakes? And if you play a victim and you blame everybody else, you didn't learn shit, right? Anyways, let's go to the Trump thing. Okay, so my wife had said that Trump was backing off on some of the tariffs last night. I don't know. I looked for stuff to confirm that, but this is all he said.
Well, I'll be speaking to President Xi. I have a great relationship with him. We're going to have a very good relationship, but we have a $1 trillion deficit because of Biden with President Xi. More than that. I mean, I've heard $1.2 trillion. We have a deficit. And I've explained that to President Xi. We also have a problem where he's allowing fentanyl to be sent into Mexico and then cross the border and, killing. I think the number is much higher than the 125.
Trump doesn't give a shit about Americans dying from fentanyl. Right? He doesn't. If you know anything about his personality, he doesn't. These are issues because he's into the border stuff and he's promised stuff on the border. And so, he's making it like the fentanyl is a reason. The real reason is he's made it an issue, right?
515, that I think it's closer to 300,000 people a year. And so that's a problem. But they have a tremendous surplus against the United States, so we don't want that.
Mr. President, a number of industries have come to you asking for exemptions on tariffs. Is that something that is under consideration by you?
Well, people are coming to me and talking about tariffs, and a lot of people are asking me if they could have exceptions. And once you do that for one, you have to do that for all. So,
the reason they're asking you for exceptions is because you're going to put all these companies out of business, and they're going to have to raise their prices. Like, companies are now all trying to figure out how much they have to raise their prices because they're, submitting orders to people, right? They're doing orders for people, these big businesses that sell, products to people where there's some sort of a contract, right? So if you work for some institution like a school or something and you're buying a bunch of, like, I don't know, say furniture or, whatever stuff they might sell you, like even something like, toilet paper or something, right? Or something like these are bigger items, like things like appliances and things like cars, things that take steel, or things like furniture that takes wood and metal and things, right? And so you now have to factor in how much Canadian steel and some of these commodities you're going to need to put together your furniture, your appliances or your cars or whatever. And they're going to be tariffed multiple times. These things that used to go back and forth. You have a plant now in China, or you have a plant somewhere else. All these things, right? You get different components from different places all over the world. And so, Trump is ever-changing tariffs because, like, he's not, clear on these things. And you're producing these products ahead of time, and then there's going to be an inflationary aspect to it. And there's going to be a price increase on American steel because there's less competition. And so there's going to be a supply is going to go down and demand is going to go up. And so you're making these things. Let's say somebody orders a bunch of appliances from you or a bunch of cars, and you haven't made them yet. Like, these are things that are going to be manufactured in your facilities, and you have to figure out how much more to charge people. And it might be like 200%. These companies now getting money. Let's say it's a school or something that's getting money from federal grants or some other stuff like that, right? So all these things, you have these businesses that have to give price quotes on these things, and they don't know what to do. And, they're already been doing this because there's been inflation, right? When there's inflation, you have to, what is the inflation going to be like in 6 months? So how much more do we have to charge? 20% more, right? And then you have these, companies that have this money, loans or whatever. Are they going to have to get more money, to buy these products they need? Companies setting up an office building, and they have to buy all this stuff. And so businesses are already suffering. Companies aren't able to, or, schools or whatever it is, aren't able to afford as much stuff with their money because their money's worth less. And now he's fucked it with the tariffs. It's all very confusing. And nobody knows how this is going to go because Trump is so fucking arbitrary. And he doesn't, he might reverse his position on this thing. And so, so people are like, well, let's wait and see what happens here. So it's fucking business up, right? And so people are coming to him. Some of the companies are going to be put out of business. They rely on exporting their products, or they rely on imports to make their products. And he's going to put them out of business. So they're coming, please give us an exception. And like here, he says it right here, like he's
asking for exemptions on tariffs. Is that something that is under consideration by you?
Well, people are coming to me and talking about tariffs, and a lot of people are asking me if they could have exceptions. And once you do that for one, you have to do that for all. So
yeah, there's a reason, because you're fucking putting these people out of business who voted for you, you fuck. You moron. Like he's like an idiot.
And generally, I did something interestingly during 2 weeks ago. I gave the American car companies a break because it would have been unfair if I didn't. And everybody said, oh, he changed his mind on tariffs. I didn't change my mind. I helped our, sort of big three, big four. I helped some of the American companies.
Because if you didn't, they would be fucked. And so this is what you probably figure out, that your tariffs aren't fucking working, right? Because it's just not car companies. It's all these companies.
And instead of taking it properly, they said, oh, he changed it. I don't change, but the word flexibility is an important word. Sometimes there's flexibility, so they'll be flexible.
I don't change. Like, this is what I'm talking about, Hilaria and Alec Baldwin. You fucked up, bro. The fucking tariffs are moronic. You got elected to reduce prices, inflationary issues that cause price hikes, right? That's why you got fucking elected, you moron. And instead of doing things that were going to reduce prices like you promised, you put in tariffs that were immediately going to increase prices and inflation and hurt the business community with no long-term goal, because manufacturing isn't going to return to America. It's not. And you're going to be out. In 2 years, you'll be so frickin', contaminated. I mean, like, people are going to start walking away from you, the Republican Party. You'll be lame duck. The Democrats will win back the House and the Senate, right? And he'll be just sitting there with his dick in his hand, talking about tariffs, right? Like, fucking, he's a moron. And he's done the exact opposite of what he was hired to do. And his people who, inevitably are, I mean, at some point they're going to realize this guy's a fucking boob, right? He's not a genius. And the tariff thing, and people don't really like tariffs. And when they see it starts affecting them, if you have some things that you really like, things that you're addicted to, or things that you have on a regular basis, and the price goes up a lot. Let's say it's a form of alcohol that, is now tariffed, or, something that's an import, or whatever it is. Like, you have something that you like, and you realize it's gone up by 4 or 5 times because of the tariffs, and you're like, oh, this guy's a fucking asshole. Like, he's a moron. Or you can't even get it anymore because the companies go out of business. Because now these companies are manufacturing things that export them, and then to Canada or other places, or use Canadian imports to make their products. Now you're fucking your own manufacturers, which the tariffs were supposed to be about in the first place. Like, everybody should realize this guy's a complete idiot. But he's an idiot that doesn't like to lose face, and doesn't like to admit he's wrong, and doesn't reverse himself. And so it's the worst kind of idiot, right? It's an idiot that doesn't want other people to know he's an idiot. And so, this is Hilaria and Alec. They said if you dislike Hilaria, you think she's a fraud, and you're a Trumper, well, this is your guy. Like, this is why they hate each other. This is why there's hatred between Alec Baldwin and Trump, because they are the same person. They have the same personality, just like Joe Biden has the same personality type. Joe Biden couldn't admit he was wrong, and couldn't admit that he had dementia, and couldn't do all the things that he needed to do to make things right, because they're fragile, fucked up people. Narcissistic, and, they care about what people think about them, and they do shit that's bad, and then they have to, they harden instead of being flexible. They put up they get stubborn instead of relinquishing and surrendering to the truth of their fucking incompetence, right? So,
but
go back a little bit.
I helped some of the American companies, and instead of taking it properly, they said, oh, he changed it. I don't change, but the word flexibility is an important word. Sometimes there's flexibility, so there'll be flexibility, but basically it's reciprocal, so that if China's charging us 50% or 30% or 20%, and I don't mean China, I mean anybody, any country, Canada. Nobody knows that Canada's charging our dairy farmers. They have 270% tariffs. Nobody knows that. Nobody knows that. They have up to 400%. They have a couple of tariffs at 400%. Nobody knows that. Nobody talks about that. And remember,
nobody does. They don't know that because it's not true.
With Canada, we don't need their cars. We don't need their lumber. We don't need their energy. We don't need anything from Canada. And yet it costs us $200 billion a year in subsidy to keep Canada afloat. So when I say they should be a state, I mean that. I really mean that. Because we can't be expected to carry a country that is right next to us on our border. It would be a great state. It would be a cherished state. The taxes for Canadian citizens would go down in less than half. They don't spend money on military because they think we're going to protect them. There are many things that they do, like icebreakers. They want us to provide icebreakers for them. Oh, that's
they want our fucking icebreakers. We've been giving them icebreakers.
Wonderful. So, the Canada, they're very tough traders too. I want to just tell you, of all the people, they're tough traders. They trade very tough.
They're tough traders. They're the biggest traders ever. That's what we want, a bunch of traders. Not those kind of traders, traders.
And, the expression I use is, some people don't have the cards. I used that expression about a week and a half ago, right?
Yeah, when was that? What was that? How'd that work out? So, okay, let's say he's telling the truth about Canadian milk. So you can do the same thing for, the Canadian milk tariffs. You could put tariffs on Canadian milk. You could do something specific to that tariff. Like everything the Canadians are tariffing America on, you could tariff something of equal, not just 100% tariffs on everything, or just to 20% tariffs on a blanket imports, right? Just do specific things. Like if they are putting tariffs on certain things, because they have dairy farmers in Canada and they want people to buy Canadian milk. That's what that's about. Whatever tariffs they do have. I don't know if he's telling the truth because he makes shit up, right? But like if you were going to do this in a way, or you could say, we're not going to give you the $200 billion unless you do something. You squeeze them. I don't think the Canadians are screwing America over. I don't think America, all that stuff that the money that is being looted by his family and by the Biden family, and all their buddies and all their people, the people who loot American taxpayer dollars across the, country and across the globe. All these business people like Elon Musk getting, $20 billion. These individual corporations, whatever, for his various, program stuff for Tesla, the breaks he got for electronic cars, all those things. There's people who just take advantage of American taxpayers. And Trump has been one of them. And his people are also people that do that. And so there's countries that maybe do that to whatever extent, but they're also taking advantage of Canadian taxpayers. And so, he's talking about the trade deficit. It's because our dollar is valued more. And you have to pay American workers more. American workers have, more standards. And so none of those things can be changed because Americans are still entitled. They're not going to do shit jobs. And also getting rid of people who are, illegal aliens who do jobs that Americans won't do. And all these things drive up prices, which is the big thing. Like you're elected to bring down prices. And he's failing to do that. And he's not admitting that. Like the tariffs are hurting the fucking consumer. They're hurting the average American person. And the businesses and the manufacturers. Like they're coming to you saying, you're screwing our business. You're not helping making our business better. This isn't going to, they don't have some kind of idea that this is going to be better for American companies. It's worse. That's why they need exceptions, right? Exemptions. And so, Jesus Christ, right? Like the guy, everyone knows it. The stock prices are dropping and economy's cratering. And he's still talking about bullshit things that have nothing to do with any, benefit to the American people.
Somebody was negotiating who didn't have the cards, who's now, I think, saying that he wants to do it, and I think we're going to have a big deal on that very special something. We got to make a deal on that.
Yeah, that's a negotiation where we were literally giving him billions of dollars, and now you have that leverage. Like you have complete leverage over him and whatever, and like to make him cave. But that's not the same as the tariffs, right?
But Canada has been a very nasty negotiator against the United States.
Nasty. You've created war with Canada.
Advantage of the United States for a long time. But nobody knows that they were getting 270% tariffs on dairy products.
Nobody knows because it's not true. Like,
I want to ask you about...
I don't know how this thing came up. It auto-played. Trump has declared war on the rule of law in America. Former federal judge says. We're not going to watch this. Well, let's take a look at Trump's claim of 270% tariffs on milk. Okay, so as most of you guys know, I spend a good 20% of my time mocking CNN, MSNBC, mainstream media, Fox, media in general, the official story. Maybe, more than 20%. But, I know Trump's lying. I know he's bullshitting. And so, fact check, what does Trump doesn't mention about Canada's dairy tariffs? And this is where he's being full of shit, right? Because, Trump is looking for a way to provoke the American people and say, Canada's screwing us over. And, like the American business community and the American, not just in terms of the government, he's making it sound like they haven't known how to do anything right for the last whatever amount of years. And Canada's a predator, right? So, that's not true, right? The American business, we're good at business, right? America's good at business. You'd say that, we are. We make a lot of money, good at scams, right? These things as well, and good at not being scammed. But Trump likes to think of himself as such a better negotiator than previous presidents and, other businessmen, the art of the deal. And he's full of shit. He's not a good negotiator. What he does is he bullies people he has leverage over. So this was reported to me by a barber who talked to people who worked with Trump at Trump Tower. And he would take small businesses, individual vendors, and make a deal with them. Create some sort of, they would provide whatever they were providing for Trump Tower, Trump's businesses. And then he'd renegotiate the deal with his superior money, his capital, his lawyers, and they wouldn't be able to fight it off, right? He'd basically renege on his contract, and he did this quite often. So he would bully people into getting, basically they didn't want to go out of business. Oftentimes they'd have to do things at cost or making almost no profit because Trump would screw them over. He wouldn't honor his deal. And then, of course, going bankrupt and doing these things. So he's manipulate the system to make more money in a way that was seedy and, unfair and being a piece of shit because he's a piece of shit, right? And so this is what it says. So Trump wants the American people to be mad at Canada, which is a fucked up thing to do. And he wants to create hostility there because this is what he always does. He wants to say how bad Canada's been screwing you over and you never knew about it, and how Joe Biden's a part of that because that's his whole narrative. And it's not accurate. And I believe CNN because I know Trump's a lying piece of shit. Not that CNN isn't a lying piece of shit, but they don't have to lie about this because this is what Trump's doing. He's trying to manipulate his followers. He's trying to manipulate Canada and, all these other, entities. He stuck his freaking dick out there on the tariffs, and now he's like, well, I got to make a case for it because it's failing, right? And so this is what he's done. President Donald Trump correctly noted Friday, as he has before, that Canada has tariffs above 200% on dairy products imported from the U.S., but Trump failed to mention a critical fact. Those high tariffs kick in only after the U.S. has hit a certain Trump-negotiated quantity of tariff-free dairy sales to Canada each year. So Trump already negotiated this deal where Canada would be able to impose some tariffs to protect their own dairy industry after a certain amount of imports had been reached. So U.S. could import so much dairy with tariff-free dairy, to meet their dairy demands there, but only a certain amount, so Canada has their own dairy farms and whatever. So, this is bullshit, right? That's just, that part alone makes Trump a lying piece of shit. That's, something he negotiated with Canada, and now he's renegotiating it because he's fucking an asshole. This is what he does. This is Trump's business practices. As the U.S. dairy industry acknowledged, the U.S. is hitting its allowed zero tariff maximum in any category of dairy product. Is not hitting. So there's no tariffs, right? The U.S. isn't importing enough milk and dairy products to reach the tariffs. So Canada is still using whatever amount of, their own milk and dairy, and they're not having, the whole thing. You get the idea. So the tariffs aren't even there. So Trump's just making shit up. And it was something he negotiated, right? So Trump negotiated this deal, right? And so U.S. made Mexico trade contract, agriculture market access, and dairy outcomes of the USMC agreement. So this is the agreement that Trump negotiated, right? And there's the dairy part. Let me find the key access, increasing dairy market access. In addition to the current exports of dairy products, the U.S. United States makes to Canada of $69 million in 2017. Canada will provide new tariff rate quotas exclusively for the United States. This agreement includes market access gains for the following American products: fluid milk, cheese, cream, skim milk, butter, cream, concentrated condensed milk, all these things, right? So this is a Trump negotiated deal. And so he's the guy who negotiated the bad deal. Like, he's the one who it's not a bad deal because they're not even implying these tariffs. In many categories, notably including milk, the U.S. is not even at half the zero tariff maximum. In practice, these tariffs are not actually paid by anyone, an expert on Canadian agriculture said in an email. So they're not paying these tariffs. We're not paying these tariffs. It's a bullshit claim on Trump's part, and he's lying to you. He's lying to me. He's lying to all of us, and being disingenuous because there are these tariffs. But he leaves out the part that he negotiated them, and they don't kick in ever. Like they're not real tariffs because it's not happening. And he's, using this as a way to fuck you over and do his, instead of admitting he's wrong. Because if he was right, he wouldn't have to make false claims. He wouldn't have to bullshit his way into, some kind of bullshit dairy tariff. He wouldn't have to talk about how bad Canada sucks because he negotiated a deal with them, and now he's reneging on this deal, which he always fucking does. This is Trump 101. He's trying to bully them, and he's hurting you at the grocery store because in terms of inflation and all these things because of these tariffs. So he's screwing the American people. They promised to reduce these prices. He's screwing Canada. He's going back on this deal, and he's lying about it. He has to lie about it because there's nothing here to tell. If he could tell you the truth about how Canada's screwing you over, he brought up dairy twice, and it's bullshit, right? This is Trump fucking bullshitting you because he's a bullshitter. He's a grifter. He got caught grifting. He's a moron, and he won't admit he's wrong and say, yeah, I'm destroying the economy. And, even if, his whole thing is, well, there'll be short-term pain and long-term gain. That's not true. It's just not true. Trump also made a claim that is simply false. He told reporters Friday that the situation with Canadian dairy tariffs, well taken care of at the time of his first presidency, ended under Biden. They just kept raising it. In reality, Canada did not raise its dairy tariffs under then-President Joe Biden, as official Canadian documents show, and industry groups on both sides of the border confirmed to CNN. The tariffs Trump was announcing Friday were left in place by the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, or the USMC, which Trump negotiated, signed in 2018, and is touted as the best trade deal ever made. This is classic fucking Trump. Talking about how they made this incredible trade deal. He's the one who made the trade deal in 2018 with Canada and Mexico, and now he says they're screwing us over, right? It's the fentanyl. He didn't give a shit about fentanyl. Fuck you, you lying piece of shit, right? So he said, I love this word tariff, but he didn't know what it really fucking meant. And now everyone's like, hey, you're fucking up the economy. And he's like, oh no, but Canada's, they're screwing us on the milk. Yeah, a deal you negotiated that we don't even meet those requirements, so the tariffs aren't being paid. This is Trump being a lying piece of shit, right? And it's hurting everybody, but him, and obviously him as well. The White House did not respond to CNN's Friday's request for a comment. So Trump's USMS left Canada's high dairy tariffs in place. Trump did not achieve dairy concession from Canada. Canada has for decades urged U.S. lawmakers with supply management policies that support Canadian farmers to protect its dairy, eggs, and poultry industries from foreign competition. And so, this is a Trump thing. So fuck Trump, right? This is, and all his supporters who just buy into whatever he says because they trust this fucking guy when he's just a proven and known liar. And, like I said about Hilaria and Alec Baldwin, you can say this about Joe Biden. These are these type of personalities. This guy Dodgy from Heartfulness. They don't like to lose face in the Indian culture. Trump does it. There's people who would rather pretend they weren't wrong than prevent a disaster from happening, right? Like they don't care how many people have to suffer as long as they don't have to admit that they were wrong. Jesus Christ, we all make mistakes. It's not that hard, but as soon as Trump says that, yeah, he fucked up in the tariffs, he loses all credibility. His presidency is done because he's banking everything on these fucking tariffs that have just a disastrous outcome. He's trying to bully all these countries, and they know that there's dissent in America and things are falling apart. So it's not even, it's not an effective bullying tactic because they know they can outlast Trump on this thing. They know if they just make the American people suffer, and it comes back to these tariffs, they'll crush this motherfucker. American people will turn on him, and then he'll just be left, like a fucking moron sitting in his fetal position, wondering why everybody hates him, right? Because that's his persona. So News Nation, they have Chris Cuomo's. That's their kind of liberal, whatever he is. He's like more right wing, trying to be a little bit more truther. But News Nation, they're one of the worst, right wing. They covered the election like Joe Biden stole it, very right wing. They, this whole thing. They definitely lean right. So they're not, if you don't believe CNN because their CNN sucks, News Nation is on Trump's side. Does Canada really have tariffs above 200% on U.S. dairy products? U.S. doesn't hit levels of tariff-free sales for 200-plus tariffs to kick in. Trump negotiated the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement in 2018. U.S. has never gotten close to exceeding quotas, dairy groups say. So News Nation is calling bullshit on what Trump said, right? And, Trump's a lying piece of shit because, again, this is about his leadership, and this is about him being right about tariffs. And so his idea, his premise he's trying to sell you is that Canada has been screwing America over because of poor leadership. But he negotiated this deal, which now I forgot about, in 2018, he negotiated this fucking deal. So he's the one, right, that got screwed over. If Canada's screwing us over, it's him because in this trade deal, he said it was the best trade deal ever. Right here, they even quote it. So, Trump says Canadian tariffs rose during Biden's presidency, according to CNN. They're quoting CNN. They're looking at CNN as an actual source of news here. This right wing, whatever it is, right? Because he said the best trade deal ever, right? That's what Trump called it, the best trade deal ever, right? So he negotiated the last deal with Canada, and Biden left it in place, right? And so, this is Trump's interview, the best trade deal ever. He always says that. Like, whatever he does is great. And now we say it's a shitty deal, and Canada's been screwing us over because, he hopes people don't fact check him because he's a lying sack of shit, right? Like, he doesn't have anything to, his premise is, okay, Canada sucks, and they're ruthless trade negotiators. They screwed the last guy over who negotiated a deal with them. Who was that last guy? Oh, it was me. And it was the best trade deal ever for us. What the fuck are you talking about? Well, dairy prices, they have this horrible fucking, this thing on dairy prices. Yeah, but you negotiated that deal. Oh, yeah. Well, they don't hit those fucking quotas. Oh, I know. But, I have to say something because otherwise I have to admit that I'm a piece of shit, and I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. And I don't want to lose face because, that would be bad. I have to admit I'm wrong. So I got to make up some shit about Biden that isn't true and some shit about Canada that isn't true because I've created a fucking trade war with our friendly neighbor to the north. What the fuck, right? And I knew it was bullshit when he was saying it because he's just Trump. Like he just, he says shit like, they're eating the dogs. And so all these Trumpers who fucking don't, the people who don't fact check their own guy, they'll fact check the shit out of Biden. They'll fact check, or they'll listen to other people fact check him. But not Trump. He's fucking, no, he's untouchable. Like, especially these truthers that are still embracing Trump. Holy shit. You're embarrassing yourself, right? This guy's the biggest fucking grifting fraud in the history of American presidents. And they're all grifting frauds. And he's just the worst. So that's fucking Trump's. Okay, so I want to get to the liberals freaking out. I got somebody on one of these shows saying he wants to leave the Democratic Party, which is stupid. I got some stuff from Morning Joe, which is stupid. All this stuff. But, I don't want to get away too much to my theme of liberals freaking out to Trump, but we always have to cover the fact that Trump is a worthless piece of shit and he's destroying America, which I believe is God's will, so I'm not, I guess Trump is doing God's will, but, he still sucks. But this is a good example of the left-right paradigm at work, or the right-right paradigm at work in this case.
Tell us about my all-time favorite member of Congress, Dan Crenshaw.
Yeah. So he's a tough one. He's a hothead on Twitter now.
He's out of control.
Yeah, I don't
think he's out of control. Again, given the crazy shit that Tucker Carlson says and some of the bullshit stuff and, all this stuff. The problem with Tucker Carlson, I mean, he's got connections to the CIA, which I haven't really researched, but I believe that to be the case. But even if he doesn't, he's a piece of shit Trump supporter who used to hate Trump and said it. Like there's tape of him saying how much he hated Trump and, hot mic stuff. And I just got a call, our furnace isn't working. And, it's just warming up to the point where we're probably not going to need heat pretty soon. And we could make it without if we had to. Like the house is 63 degrees right now. And it'll warm up. If I cook something in the oven, it'll warm up like, a couple degrees, at least by the thermostat. But, then we have to worry about next year. It's like one of those things. I got to, it's not been starting. Like, I think, the way I would look at it in the old-fashioned stove is the pilot light went out. But they don't have pilot lights anymore. So I turn the thing on and off, and it comes back on sometimes. But I'm like, that's just not sustainable. Like, going down dealing with that thing every freaking morning or whatever. So the guy's coming. But anyways, I don't know where I was. Let's go back to this thing here.
I don't understand why he's taken this stance a little bit.
Because I think his personal life is out of control.
Yeah, because he used
Okay, his personal life's out of control. But, so Tucker Carlson keeps on talking about Trump's assassination attempt, how he was there and how scary it was. And he's a piece of shit liar because he's smart enough to know it was fake as fuck. And this is the issues that I have with all these people. And that terrorists don't work, right? And so Dan Crenshaw and him have this thing, they got some kind of dick measuring contest going on. I know that they've had some issues. I think Dan Crenshaw threatened to beat him up or something. I don't know. I never liked Dan Crenshaw. I thought he was some kind of, CIA operative himself. And, it's just, they're all sucky. But the way that he handles this.
Used to be like a right-wing darling. Like he was, with the Navy SEALs, I think early on. Again,
not with me. I always thought he was a freak and a warmonger.
Really? Yeah.
Weirdo, yeah. He's a freak and a warmonger weirdo, but yeah.
He's showing it now.
Yeah.
Did you see the Free Press?
So he's on the wrong side of the he's on the wrong side of the Ukraine, but he has a stooge come in and he's going to tell you how Dan Crenshaw is a piece of shit, right?
Posted this. He essentially comes out and he's like supporting politician stock trading. He's like, if you get rid of it, you're going to get crappy politicians. And it's like, what are you talking about? Like we're not asking you guys to.
That's like saying
not get paid.
If you don't allow the police to shake down speeders at gunpoint, you're going to get a worse kind of cop.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's
crazy. It's fucking crazy.
Yeah. So he had a fiery one with the Free Press probably about like 2 months ago. Right before Thanksgiving.
I saw that.
So sure, yeah, why not? Don't let us trade stocks. How about we'll just keep whipping ourselves. How about we don't make any money either? How about just cut our paychecks? We haven't gotten a pay raise since 2008, even a COLA increase. So, yeah, this is a great idea. Let's make Congress a place where only the millionaires can actually afford to do the job. This is a wonderful idea.
His portfolio, though, in particular.
Okay, so they're going to tell you how corrupt he is. So this is the Nancy Pelosi law, where these guys wouldn't be able to do insider trading and get inside information, which they all do. Remember, Dianne Feinstein died with $110 million of assets. Her salary was $200,000, $300,000 a year. And so she had a private jet. I mean, she had, and probably more assets that we don't know, like this kind of thing. So hidden assets. But the only way they get those amounts of money, this happened in India, which is a very corrupt place where, it's just corruption just out and out in the open and heavy bureaucracy. And there was a woman, she was a former Bollywood star from Chennai area, and she got elected, very popular, bought, people bags of rice and did things for the poor. So she was very, she was like a guru. They have these politicians are almost like gurus. They're celebrities. And they found like $10 million, American dollars in her bank. And I forget the term they used, but there was no, attributable, there was no way that she could have gotten that money without payoffs. Like there was just money she had, like fucking laundered money. Like she just had $10 million with no way of showing proof of how she obtained that money. And the guy wrote a book about her charges, like a phone book size affidavit. And they eventually just let her walk. A corrupt judge let her walk. And his piece of paper was 2 paragraphs long, right? So, but it was a whole thing that happened there. And these politicians here have the same thing where they have all this money and there's no way to show how they received that money, right? So this is a legitimate thing. But Trump is as corrupt or more than any of these people. Fucking guy right here.
Hey everyone, we should ban TikTok. It's like pretty convenient to say when you own TikTok's main competitor, and every time you're saying that, the stock's going up 5%. He then goes off and starts asking for the ban on, and again, like I feel like I'm pretty pro ban TikTok, so there's a whole world with that. But he then goes
okay, so the issue here is, yeah, the guy's a piece of shit, right? I agree he's a piece of shit. But Trump's a piece of shit. And all of Trump's cabinet's a piece of shit. Elon Musk's a piece of shit. Tucker Carlson's a piece of shit, right? Like this idea that somehow, and then let's go to this part here. He has a little ad that comes up here.
Boiling.
When you sleep better, you live better, you feel better, and you live longer. Sleep is really important, but there's a lot acting against us who are trying to get a good sleep, starting with screen time.
Screen time's a big fucking deal.
It scrambles your brain, makes it hard to sleep.
It's scrambling brains all over the time. Your screen is scrambling your fucking brain. How do we solve this, Tucker?
A lot about sleep, not getting as much as we should. So a new partner we want to tell you about can help you. It's called Beam's Dream Powder.
Exactly. We're using the shit out of it. Even if they didn't pay me, I'd be telling you about it. Even if Beam didn't give me loads of money to tell you about how your fucking brain is being scrambled by the screen time and how... what else is this?
And it's made with a blend of all natural ingredients.
It's all natural. None of that bullshit. It's natural. I mean, it's got natural shit in there.
It's not made by Pfizer.
Not made by Pfizer. So this is the part, right? Not made by Pfizer. So Trump. So he was right on vaxxers. And he went on Fox News, and the whole thing. He pushed back against some of these things, which he was right on. Which I said, this guy's at least moving in the right direction. And, I said this about all these people. If you were moving in the right direction, you didn't have to be a truther, but just, you're saying some things that are true. And that during that period of time, it was great because Joe Biden's a piece of shit and he was against Biden and some of Biden's, bogus policies. But now it's a problem because he's convinced you that he's a truther because he says shit like, hey, it's not made by Pfizer. Like he's convinced you he's one of us. And I know most of you guys, but still, he's convinced people in the truth community he's one of us. And yet he's talking about Trump's fake an assassination attempt like it's a real thing. And he's talking about tariffs and things as a good thing. And he's pushing Trump's bogus policies. And so now he's, these people who pretend to be truthers, and they realize, they understood the narratives that exist in the truth community, especially the right-wing narratives, and they embrace them. And they take your money and they push faulty promises and false gods like Trump. And so they're kind of worse than the liberals who push back against the truth community. Because at least the liberals are being honest about their position. They're your honest enemies. But he's your enemy pretending to be your friend. So which is worse, your enemy who embraces being your enemy or your enemy who pretends to be your friend? It's the enemy who pretends to be your friend. And Trump and these motherfuckers are all pretending they're like us and they're on our side, and they're fucking not. Just because they say the things that you believe in, because they've learned what you believe in and have learned to talk about them, and say shit like this.
Just be acting against us who are trying to get a good sleep, starting with screen time.
Screen time.
It scrambles your brain, makes it hard to sleep. So we're thinking a lot about sleep, not getting as much as we should. So a new partner we want to tell you about can help you. It's called Beam's Dream Powder. And it's made with a blend of all natural ingredients. It's not made by Pfizer. It's science-backed. It's American-built and...
It's science-backed, though. It's not some crazy fucking left-wing nuts and fruits and berries and herbs and shit.
And best of all, it legitimately tastes good. It can help you fall asleep, stay asleep, and wake up feeling amazing. Everybody in the staff loves it. No more tossing and turning during the night. No more groggy wake-ups, desperate for the coffee.
No more dreams about Satan and fucking child sacrifices that we've been having so much lately. And no more dreams about the horrific after effects of Trump's apocalypse after he runs the economy into the ground. We're having these great, sweet dreams. It's almost like we're taking some sort of hallucinogenic so that we don't, with all the stuff that we've done to sell our soul to the devil, isn't there when we're sleeping.
We're not the only ones who use it. So many people have used Beam that has improved over 17.5 million nights of sleep. They're keeping track, helping Americans from all over the country wake up feeling
They're keeping track. They have lists and they're checking it twice.
good and ready to go.
So this is the friend, the guy who pretends you're a friend, but he's your enemy as much as the liberal media, even more so, and backing this fucking piece of shit Trump. At some point, these people all have to say, yeah, Trump's a piece of shit. Like, yeah, he's a legitimate piece of shit. But they won't, right? Because, they've gone all in. So they're going to back this guy, even though he's running the country on the ground and he's an out-and-out moron. Like, he isn't calling bullshit on Trump for saying that there's 200% tariffs on American dairy, which aren't activated, and they come from a deal that Trump made that he said was the best trade deal ever. And then he's lying about Biden had some kind of, secret deal no one knows about to give Canada more ability to tariff our dairy products, right? Like, he's just a lying sack of shit. And he has to lie because he doesn't have anything real, because he's a fucking grifter. And so these people who are carrying his water and, in full knowledge that Trump's an idiot, because this guy knew Trump was an idiot before, but he decided to go full idiot. And so this is a particular piece of shit here, a particular kind of piece of shit. So this is Abby Phillips. She has now become my second favorite CNN person because she's mild and reasonable, but she conducts this, intense show with very opinionated people. She's not as good as the gumball guy, the guy who counts Trump's lies and gumballs, but she provides good content by being, sort of a calm voice amongst a bunch of left and right people arguing. So this guy, I don't know who he is and why he's on the show, but he has this to say.
The grassroots is furious, right? Most of the caucus is furious.
Tory, Substack author, Culture Fries by Tory.
I never before, my parents were Democrats. I've been a Democrat my entire life. Never before did I say, I should leave this party, because if democracy is at risk and you had no idea what to do and you have no plan, and even now at this moment, you know nothing of what to do and you're capitulating to this is disgusting.
Are you thinking about leaving the Democratic Party? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, me
personally. He just said that.
Yes, I'm not an elected official, but I have always voted with the Democrats.
Over this issue?
Yeah, over the inability to figure out what to do in the face of fascism and the rise of Trump.
I hear you on.
So here's the thing. You don't have to vote. I mean, this is the whole thing that you have to get over, because you've been told your whole life you're a piece of shit if you don't vote. People who are, you don't have a right to complain if you don't vote. There's a George Carlin take on this somewhere, one of his comedian bits that he does. And he said, it's just the opposite, because if you vote, you're saying, I agree with the outcome of the election. Like, you're basing your faith in the outcome of the election. But if you don't vote, then it's not your responsibility, because you didn't do anything to contribute to this government, this nightmare, right? You're not participating because, it's useless. Because no matter what you do in terms of your voting, like I've discussed this before, there is a study they did, and they didn't have to do the study, because what I'm about to say, if you don't understand that, then you're brain dead. That whatever issue, wherever the money was on any issue, on any political issue, whatever side had more money, that side won. That money bought like legislation and political policy 100% of the time. It wasn't people's opinion. It wasn't whether people were mad or not. It was whether there was enough money on the side of the issue. And so if you know that, that means that your vote means nothing. Because you don't have any money. You don't have the kind of money. I mean, you can all give somebody $5 and they get enough money from you to run a campaign, and then fuck you over later on when they get real money from corporations that'll pay them millions, right? And this whole corruption that we saw with Dan Crenshaw and Tucker Carlson thing and all that stuff, right? And so it's pointless to vote because they only give you two bad choices and two bad parties, right? And you already have people making these choices. Like, for example, you used to have just Fox, MSNBC, and CNN, and then all the network news, right? All these different news agencies, cable and regular channel dial-up antenna TV type of stuff. ABC, CBS, NBC, and PBS, right? So you had these 4 networks, and then eventually Fox came in, which didn't have news because they had their own news channel. But, people thinking that it's a choice between Fox, MSNBC, or CNN, well, that's almost nobody. Almost nobody gets their information from those networks. Now, when it comes to covering something that you need a budget for, like a natural disaster or something in some other country, yeah, you might tune into some of these big networks because they're going to show you if there's an earthquake or a big event, because they're going to have the ability to cover this in your local news and things like this. But the majority of people don't get their information from any of these news sources, any of these official news stories, and yet they still vote. They give you 2 choices, and you have all these other choices of what to do with your time and how to contribute to society, and realizing your vote means absolutely nothing. I don't care if you vote or not, because it's meaningless. I'm not going to try to talk anybody out of voting, but I'm saying about this guy, he's leaving the Democratic Party, so what, are you going to become a Republican? Or are you going to vote for some third-party candidate that has no chance of winning? And so the real issue, the real part of politics that could make a difference is local politics, especially if you live in a small city, a small town, where there's, not that many people, not much money, and your activism could make a difference politically. But, I have a better way, which is, become a better person spiritually, and you elevate other people by doing that. Because so many people are going to the dark side, they're pulling people down with them, right? A negative person pulls people down to a lower level, and a saint pulls people up to a higher level. So become a spiritual person and become a better person yourself, and then that way you'll affect change. Like, that to me is the best way, right? But either way, it's all bullshit that, you're somehow, you have to vote. Like, who gives a shit if you vote or not? It doesn't matter. And most places where these people are voting, like CNN people, they're voting in Washington, D.C., they're voting in New York, they're voting in Philadelphia, all these media people, and they're already blue states. So your vote means nothing, right? They're voting in California. So their vote literally doesn't affect anything in terms of the outcome of the election.
On that, the inability to have a plan is absolutely a problem, right? But I'm really questioning, what is the plan after the shutdown happens? Because when a shutdown happens, people don't get paid. And this is not exactly an administration that wants to keep the government open. They actually want the thing to be shut down.
Yeah, but here's the thing. And I'm not a Democrat, never was. I was a lifelong Republican and quit the party over Donald Trump because he is
Of course you did.
Someone who doesn't respect the Constitution and is trying to rule like a king. So, but look, I was part of the Tea Party movement. I watched what happened and how Republicans...
At some point, you have to realize the system's fucked. And we're fucked in terms of it collapsing. But also, it's a bad system. Democracy is a bad situation. And so, what you've done is you've taken theocracy or, kings or whatever that is... having royalty and having, sort of people based in bloodlines rule your country, and those, elites in whatever fashion it is, whether it's religion, whether it's, so-called royalty, these people are living high on the hog and exploiting all of you, the rest of the people, right? And that's because they're shitty people. And then you have socialism that doesn't work because you get a bunch of people who become elites who live high on the hog exploiting other people. Fascism, capitalism, every other ism, no matter what, there's one outcome where you have a lot of so-called elite people who end up running the system, and, they benefit and they're living a completely different lifestyle while the rest of the people suffer. That's happened over and over again. That people take power and they just reward themselves in a gluttonous way, while the rest of the people suffer, if not in their own country, in other countries. And so you have evil leaders, and whether they call themselves a king or a czar or, whatever Genghis Khan was, and these other, leaders in every country around the world, this is what's happened. You have people who think that they can dominate other people and dominate nature and extract a decadent lifestyle to themselves. And they get into weird shit. They start doing weird shit because there's nobody over them. There's no authority, and they're disconnected from God. And so if we understand that, and democracy is a bunch of dummies, many of them with the inability for abstract thought, people who can't do their own research, people who can't do critical thinking skills because they don't have the ability for abstract thought, voting, where in India they give some poor people a bag of rice and say it comes from such and such, even though the taxpayers are paying for the bag of rice. And they're like, oh my God, how wonderful this politician is. They gave me a bag of rice. And they'll vote for that person forever until somebody gives them 2 bags of rice, right? And so it's like, it fucking doesn't work. And then, of course, you can rig it and cheat and all these things. And so what we have to do is make better people. And people have to change. And it's not we have to force other people to be better. Like, we have to individually deal with the corrupt person inside ourselves and these things. It's what I say over and over again. We have to change. You can't change other people, so you have to change, right? Like, if you want the world to be better, then you stop being a piece of shit, right? I stop being a piece of shit. Like, we make that choice to elevate ourselves, and then that's the only solution. When enough people do that. And until people do that, it's always going to be the same bullshit. The same corrupt games in any form. They'll figure out a way to rig it for themselves and screw everybody else. And so, this idea, oh my God, I'm not going to vote anymore. I'm not going to be a Democrat anymore. Well, who gives a shit? Who gives a shit about that? Why are you even talking like it makes a difference? I'm not going to pull the lever anymore for my meaningless vote because I live in New York State, or I live in Washington, D.C., and my vote means nothing because all these things are already pre-decided. And so, it's just silly. And even if your vote did kind of count, it still wouldn't matter because it's the same old bullshit. It's the same people running the corrupt system. It's just, like I said, voting is, you're voting, you're deciding who gets to rob you, right? You're voting over who gets to steal your money. Like I was saying in my last video, something breaks every day. Breaking story that's significant. This one's like an all-time classic.
This just in, editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, Jeffrey Goldberg, says he was accidentally texted war plans.
Yeah, that's the dopey Brianna Keeler that made that hit piece on Joe Biden in 2015 because they didn't want him running against Hillary Clinton. And she said all the things that we knew about Joe Biden later, she knew and CNN knew in 2015. The snoozling and groping, the lying, the exaggerating, the senility, the dementia, like all those things. They were all covered in 2015, but they somehow forgot about it in 2020.
Literally just received this piece from The Atlantic.
This is a new guy who I think they're trying to put on to make him look like a podcaster or something, right?
In it, Goldberg writes, U.S. national security leaders included me in a group chat about upcoming military strikes in Yemen. I didn't think it could be real. Then the bombs started falling.
That's just great. That's a wonderful paragraph right there. These idiots over at the Pentagon, these Keystone cops, gave their war plans away to a journalist.
CNN's Alex Marquardt,
a liberal journalist,
joins us now live. And Alex, this piece came out literally in the last few minutes.
Ago.
I haven't been able to read through all of it, but this seems like something out of a farce, like out of a comedy.
It is just stunning on so many different levels. I understand
it's
why.
Like something they write about in The Youngin or something, right?
Goldberg didn't
Mad
believe
Magazine.
it was real because it is just shocking in several different ways. Goldberg was added to a Signal chat.
I wonder if his last name, they thought he was maybe an ally or something.
Some of the most senior national security members of the Trump administration. Signal is a messaging app that is encrypted, probably why these officials thought that they could have a discreet conversation on there. But on it, in this chat that Goldberg was a witness to, they talk about the planning for the recent bombing of...
Okay, so this is horrible. Like, this shows you just how bad Trump's shit is. And they just won't... They'll be unfazed, right? It's going to get worse. This whole thing's really funny. But using a third-party app like Signal, you would just be suspicious of them being able to access the data. Just because they probably could, right? If they knew that this was going on, they could probably figure a way to access the data, the people that run this app. So it's a horrible idea to use a third-party app, a commercial app, to communicate about fucking plans, war plans, right? I mean, war plans are kind of the most secret thing for a variety of reasons.
The Houthis that started on March 15th. They talk about current intelligence assessments. There's a full-on debate among these officials about whether they should carry out this bombing of the Houthis. And these are conversations that could be in violation of the Espionage Act. Now, this group was started, it looks like, by the National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, who called it the Houthi PC Small Group. PC refers to
Houthi PC Small Group. There's a sentence you don't see very often.
Principals Committee. The principals in the administration are the senior most officials. And among that group of senior officials, you have the National Security Advisor, the Vice President, the Secretary of Defense and of State, the Director of National Intelligence, the CIA Director, Steve Witkoff, the Special Envoy, the Chief of Staff to President Trump, and the list goes on. There are 18 of them. So there's this debate over whether the U.S. should go through with this bombing of the Houthis. Vice President Vance is actually arguing against it, saying that just 3% of trade goes through the Red Sea, which is where the ships have been targeted by the Houthis. Ratcliffe, the CIA director, he chimes in with current intelligence assessments that may be related to intelligence operations that are ongoing. Goldberg does not print that because, of course, that, among so many other details in this, are so highly classified.
There's classified shit here. Like this is a bunch of chuckleheads run by the chief chucklehead, the clown in charge, Trump. And not that Joe Biden wasn't a clown, but they were more, savvy about not making these kind of fuck ups. I mean, the DNC got hacked and then leaked emails and, gave away their passwords and, all that stuff. There's times that Democrats have been, equally as incompetent. And all three of them, Biden, Hillary Clinton, and Trump, mishandled classified material, which, I'm like, I don't think anything should be classified. I think all this shit that's being done should be done out in the open. Of course, then you can't, have all this secrecy, but that'll never happen. But either way, in terms of the American system and what Americans think about in terms of the Republicans and the war people, the people that are into war and military, this is a fucking huge, massive fuck up. But they'll just pretend that they're, the chosen ones, Trump, and he's, ordained by God. And they'll ignore these, there's never any sense that they're admitting themselves, hey, I think maybe we're a bunch of chuckleheads. We're clowns. We're like fucking idiots. And Trump's an idiot. Like at some point they're going to realize, because people who work for Trump already realized that during the first term, that he's like not a real brilliant guy and he's kind of a screw up and he's not researched or thoughtful and he doesn't have a good instincts or sense of things. He's just good at promoting himself and selling himself. And now you have these major fuck-ups, and his supporters aren't going to bail on him because they're ass deep in this thing, right? They're all in. And so, just keep on going. It'll drive these guys nuts because it just shows you everything that they thought about Trump is coming true.
Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, he chimes in saying that waiting a few weeks or a month wouldn't fundamentally change the calculus. And he notes, interestingly, that if this leaks, we look indecisive. Of course, it would.
It's bad for foreign governments to know how bad things are. They know that America's divided. They know there's these, bogus protests. They know that Trump is like an idiot. And, this is a good time for them to strike, right? I mean, like America's just like we're looking like fools.
Eventually leak. Now, keep in mind, as they're having this discussion, Goldberg is watching all of this unfold, and he doesn't know, again, whether it's real, but he would quickly learn that it was. On the morning of March 15th, which is the day the bombings began, Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, posted a team update at 11:44 in the morning saying the bombings were about to start 2 hours later. And in that message to this large group, again, including Goldberg, he posted operational details about these strikes that were about to happen, information about targets, about weapons and the attack sequencing. 2 hours later, the strike started. Goldberg looked up on Twitter and he started to see explosions happening in Yemen, and that's when he knew it was true. And that's when these officials essentially started celebrating. You have John Ratcliffe.
This is a great part here.
The CIA director saying, a good start. Mike Waltz,
Good start.
the National Security Advisor, responds with several emojis, as does Steve Witkoff, with 2 hands praying, a flexed bicep, and 2 American flags. So,
holy shit. I mean, they look like fucking clowns. These are fucking clowns, right? Well, complete idiots. You just killed people, right? You just fucking bombed people. And that's what you're going to fucking do? You're going to post emoji with the prayer hands and a flexed bicep and whatever the last part was. What he said those last things were?
a flexed bicep and 2 American flags.
Oh, 2 flags. It's just so fucking silly. Okay, so it's now like 4:30. I'm starting to make dinner and shit, but I ended up getting so sleepy I took a nap. And I woke up blank, like just, I had this thing I was going to say, and I don't know what it is. Hopefully it'll come back to me. But I woke up just blank and just like kind of, it took me a while to get them. Sometimes I take these naps and like I'm almost incoherent when I wake up.
Everyone approving of what just happened and celebrating. The National Security Council has not pushed back on this at all. They said that this chain was in fact real. Brian Hughes, the National Security Council spokesman, says this does appear to be an authentic message chain. They are looking into how and someone was inadvertently added, how Goldberg was added to this chain, and he tries to spin it as a demonstration of the deep and thoughtful policy coordination between senior officials. So no pushback from the White House in terms of the authenticity of this. But again, this...
Okay, so there's a few things here. I think this is what I was going to say, and if it isn't, hopefully I'll remember what it is. But, you know, Trump is always saying, I hire the best people. And we do the best deals. And he makes these deals like, it's the best deal ever. And, you know, it's the biggest thing in history, American history of the world, and these things. He makes these big claims. And he's always done that as a grifter, right? Making, you know, over-the-top claims. And he always demeans the other people, talking about how bad they are, how horrible Joe Biden was, how incompetent they were, you know, all the other bullshit, all his people and the way they went about their business and all these things, right? And, you know, when it comes out that you do something this stupid, like this is really fucking stupid, right? And it strikes your base who really are big military people. And he gets a lot of support from military people, and Republicans have always been the party of the military. And you do something as stupid as leaking these plans, like right when they're about to happen. And you got these goofy fucking emojis, and you look like little boys and stupid shit. And you're like, oh, hooray, we did it. You know, and they were talking about, oh, should we do it or not do it? You know, like there's some debate and all this stuff. And it makes them look weak and in terms of the other countries and incompetent boobs and all of it. And when you've said that you're so great, and you've talked about how you're bringing about the golden era in America, you know, this is a warning sign to all of the Trumpers that think Trump is their savior. Like, he's actually a boob. Like, he's a fucking boob, right? And his people he hires and the shit that they do, I mean, it's like a clown show. It's like Keystone Cops, you know, frickin' Three Stooges shit, right? Like, he's just a bozo. And he always has been.
May violate the Espionage Act. Jeffrey Goldberg and his colleague Shane Harris, who's an intelligence reporter, spoke with several lawyers who say that it may have violated the provisions that govern the handling of national defense information. Bottom line, they say,
to put it on Signal.
To put it on Signal, they should not have established a Signal chat in the first place.
Of course they shouldn't. Like, why a third party? This is just bad fucking planning and strategy.
Their conclusion, which is kind of obvious. And then the kicker of this whole piece is, as Hegseth is describing how this is going to unfold and what is going to happen, he says, we are currently clean on OPSEC, which is operational security. Clearly, they were not clean because they include...
That's all that military jargon. Like, it's a fucking... I mean, these guys, you know, these are precision operations. You know, perfectionistic type of, you know, the way that they they do these military ops, and for something this fucking egregious.
Included a journalist in this conversation on Signal.
Okay, who was the JG who was missing, who should have been part of the conversation?
We don't know why Waltz initially reached out to Jeffrey Goldberg.
JG? Is that some kind of derogatory term?
And added him as a contact and then eventually added him to the group. You're absolutely right. They probably thought they were adding someone else from within the administration who had a similar name. Why this mistake happened is just the first of a very long list of questions.
Well, that must be, is it Jeffrey Goldberg, the guy?
Alex Marquardt, thank you so much for bringing us this reporting. Let's talk more about this with former Defense Secretary and former CIA Director Leon Panetta.
This fucking moron. Like, they bring in these fucking hacks. This guy was a disaster. And he gets to come in and say a bunch of stupid remedial shit here.
Secretary, I'm reading the piece as we speak, and it's interesting because Goldberg writes that he had very strong doubts that this text group was real. I could not believe that the national security leadership of the United States would communicate on Signal about imminent war plans. I also could not believe that the national security advisor to the president would be so reckless, he writes, as to include the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic in such discussions with senior U.S. officials. Secretary, what's your reaction to this reporting?
Well, it's obviously a very serious mistake.
Is it a mistake? Jesus Christ, bro. Like, these are the people that were on. This is Obama's guy. Like, you think these people are the best and the brightest, and they're not. Like, they're just stooges and, political hacks. And
on the part of whoever.
But they didn't do something that's stupid. And maybe they did other things that were equally as stupid, but this specific thing, right?
Included Goldberg in this highly classified chain of command messaging that went on that involved war plans. To have had somebody from the Atlantic on that chain, without question, was a serious mistake.
Was it? Was that how you see it was serious? It was a mistake and it was a serious one?
And I hope the White House takes this seriously because
they're not. They don't fucking. Trump is incapable of, anything that leads to the truth that he's a bozo. Because Trump has convinced himself he believes his own bullshit. Like, he knows he's lying, but he doesn't know he's lying. Like, he believes his stuff, and when he gets called out and he realizes that he's going to be seen as a fraud, he loses his shit, right? I mean, he just falls apart. You can't ever do any self-evaluation and reflection. You can't not be a piece of shit, right? So that's not an option. And so he just goes on attack mode or does whatever. We're just and comes out with this rhetoric of how great they are.
The last thing you want to do when you're talking about war plans is to have a serious leak like this that could undermine the war plans, but also jeopardize lives. So I hope they take this seriously.
What would that look like, Secretary?
What would that look like, Secretary? Give me a scenario, because I can't think that one up to myself.
I think they would have to do a full investigation as to who included this name on that chain involving the highest
somebody needs to be fired.
Officials in national security, from the president to the vice president to a secretary of defense, etc. How the name of a journalist was added to that list, this is just a serious blunder, and not only could violate the espionage laws, but more importantly, can undermine our national security.
It could undermine our security. Our security's undermined now.
That's probably the greater problem, is that it reveals our most secret war plans that require that we protect that information in order to be able to conduct what is obviously a serious operation of war.
To that point, Secretary, I wonder what could have happened here if it wasn't Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor-in-chief at The Atlantic, who received this and decided to publish this story. If it had been someone else on the contact list that was added to the Signal chat, what would have been a worst-case scenario that would have put national security at risk?
You lead this guy into it because he's dumb as fuck. You got to lead him with your questions.
Well, the worst case scenario, I mean, thankfully, Jeffrey Goldberg just assumed that this was either a joke or some kind of mistake. And
because he couldn't believe that he didn't even believe Trump was just stupid and his people.
Obviously didn't pay attention. But somebody who would have the United States as an adversary could reveal this information immediately to the Houthis in Yemen that they were about to be attacked. And they, in turn, could have responded.
And they could get women and children out of the way of the harmful attack, and they wouldn't be able to kill as many people. I mean, like, it's so fucked up, right? Like, this whole thing is so fucked. Everything about it. I mean, these stooges here, and and the other thing is Trump has pissed everybody off in the media, intelligence community. So when he does makes a mistake, everybody jumps in on it. Speaking of which, Don Lemons, the great fucking journalist himself, he had something to say. Maybe the craziest story of the week, and it's only Monday. Yeah, like it's probably not, but we'll see.
Department of Defense, well, they like to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion and how it is just ruining everything. Well,
wait, let's see if they start at the beginning.
Breaking news. The Department of Defense, well, they like to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion and how it is just...
Again, this is he's like a one-trick pony. This isn't about diversity, equity, and inclusion. You could talk about how it's related to incompetence, and they talked about that being incompetence in the government. So it's, sort of semi-related to that. You can, like if you're all about diversity, equity, inclusion, you can make it about that. But this is about Trump saying that he has the best people and he is the best guy and everyone else is incompetent, and then showing the exact opposite. And it's really about Trumpers. Because you guys know, because you don't, you're not deceived by Trump's rhetoric. Even someone as stupid as Don Lemons knows Trump's an idiot. I mean, people, we've seen it over and over again. If you watch The Apprentice, you see these, the way Trump presents himself for years. He isn't smart and he isn't good. He's not effective. You understand his life story. And you just see the blunders he's made over the years, that he's an idiot. Like Trump's an idiot. And it's the Trumpers that think he's their savior. That's the fucked up thing, right? This isn't about diversity or equity or inclusion. This is about, Trump exposing what he is and the people that support him not taking it seriously. People who are concerned about national security and the integrity of the military, and they're still going to make excuses because they can't admit that the guy that they're banking on is a moron, right?
Just ruining everything. Well, the defense secretary himself, Pete Hegseth, is in a little hot water right now because he apparently included a reporter on some top secret...
Okay, he didn't include him. He's responsible because he's overseeing this. Somebody was in charge of... You think he set up the chat and all those things and he put the names in? Of course he didn't. I think at very least it would be his secretary, but somebody else probably that was responsible for this. And it isn't him, but it's going to come back to him and also on Trump too, right? But, Don Lemon just sucks so bad. Like, you're reporting... This is your big moment. I keep on saying this. Like, I got more to cover tomorrow. I mean, there's things I'm not going to get to today because of these breaking stories. I'll do the thing with hopefully I'll remember to do the thing with Morning Joe, and they're talking about these protests and the AOC bullshit things they're doing. Like, Trump is actually exposing himself as what you guys said he was. I mean, again, you guys didn't cover the fact that he faked his assassination attempt because you guys suck and you're shills and you're handled and told what you can say and what you can't. But, you guys had Trump pegged like the rest of us who knew what Trump was. I mean, not as good as we did, but you said that Trump is going to do these things. And this was your fear and the whole Agenda 2025. And this was your moment. Like, Trump is actually displaying himself as what you guys have said he is. But you have no credibility because you backed a senile fucking Joe Biden and you discredited yourself and, created a fake news environment where the majority of Americans lost faith in you as well as the Democratic Party. And so now, you have this big moment, but you shit all over it by your own incompetence, right? And you set this up so that Trump would have this launch pad to do his stupid shit. Like,
secret information on a text chain. The reporter didn't think it was real. He got the information hours earlier until the bombs started falling in Yemen. This text chain reportedly included some top secret information, including weapons packages, timing, and location. What's going to happen? Will there be any repercussions? This is still breaking. Details to come. Stand by.
Stand by. Don Lemons is on it. All right. Let me wrap this thing up here. This is what I've been telling you guys for years. It's Chucklehead City. They're a bunch of idiots, not only, in terms of celebrities and, famous people and people with money. And, these people aren't great. They're stupid people, just like everybody else. They're stupider. And they feel themselves more. They think they're better than they are. They've had some luck, some success. Some things have just happened for them that they think they have some status in a dysfunctional system. And, there are some people in there that are brilliant, that are probably holding this thing together. And that's what I was saying about Trump randomly firing people. There's people in there that are just keeping this thing going. You have one or two people in out of 5,000 that actually can do their job and everybody else's job and can carry the weight. And in the media, there's nobody because the media's lost. And our whole system's falling apart. This is what happens to a dying system, right? When things are going well, in the beginning of our country and, whatever was going on with America, whatever's been great about America, again, these guys were slave owners and there's questionable things. But the guys who wrote the Constitution, they were educated, they were brilliant, they were thoughtful people, they were capable, they had skills. They could skin animals and hunt animals and grow food. And, these guys, they had knowledge of how life worked. They weren't detached from their primary labor. They weren't detached from their food production and their clothing. If they weren't making them themselves, they understood how this stuff was done, right? And they were really, more articulate and more, in many ways, more spiritual and more, natural people. And talented people have come along in American history, some of them politicians, some of them whatever it is, and they've been brilliant people, and there's been things when we're going in the right direction. And now these are the people you get, like the Don Lemons and the Donald Trumps and the Joe Bidens and the, Hillary Clinton and the Baldwins, and, there's no greatness here anymore, right? There's some great athletic people, athletes and things, but in terms of people's characters and, baseball players who didn't play in the professional baseball and instead volunteered for World War II, Ted Williams, these people, these kind of great people that sacrificed for their country. And, I don't believe in all that patriotic bullshit, but, that was real like back then. Even if it was performative, it was better than the shit that we have now. These kids walking around zombified on their video games and, only spending, 1 or 2 hours a day in the real world. I mean, they're like so fucked right now. There's no greatness here. There's no people that are coming to save you. There's no people of capable people. And just a lot of greedy, dumb, bumbling motherfuckers. It's idiocracy. The idiocracy is clearly here. In every way you look, it's there. Go to Walmart. Go walk around. Just talk to people. Or just watch them. Just observe. You're like, oh, fuck, this is idiocracy. Like it's already set in. And this is just bumbling bullshit people. And then Donald Trump is just a scammer, a dumbass scammer who can, make dumbass people believe that he agrees with them and then scam them out of their whatever it is, money, their vote, their support, whatever he might be, as he runs this fucking country into the ground the way that the people who control the system want him to. That's where we're at. And, there's a solution, a spiritual one, and almost nobody wants to hear that shit. No one wants to hear that you have to change. You can't count on these people to change. The people who are supposedly the cream of the crop, because they're not the cream of the crop, and they're not, they're narcissistic and they're fucking remedial and they're not evolved people. They just happen to be, rewarded by a system that's dysfunctional on every level. Anyway, any old tube. Got more stuff to cover. Tomorrow's Tuesday. That's enough for Monday. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely born for the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.